Hello, I'm Loretta Simmons, and I want to focus on scams. When I read the latest ACCC Targeting Scams report, it revealed Australians lost a record $3.1 billion to scams in 2022. We could cover a good part of the national debt with that. With this in mind, we need someone to go through some areas where we might be aware and protect ourselves, and to get some help. It's a pleasure to introduce my guest, Cam Stirling from Technology Connections. Welcome to Golden Days Radio, Cam.
Thank you very much, Loretta. Thank you for having me.
Cam, we're aware that scammers use all kinds of sneaky approaches to steal our personal details. And as we age, we become more vulnerable too. Probably because we're more trusting, or are we simply naive? What do you think?
Well, I'd like to think it's more about trust than naivety. But unfortunately, I think it's also a matter of there are more of these scams taking place, and the scammers have worked out that perhaps aged people have the trust and they're targeting that particular demographic, unfortunately.
And the money, and the investments, and the financial backer.
Yes, true.
And so you are going to commence our chat today talking just briefly about what happened at Optus and Medibank Private last year, and Latitude 500, the financial services. It impacted a great number of people, and I was one of them.
It did. In fact, I would speculate that there are not many Australians who weren't impacted by at least one of the three. And, you know, in those instances, they were quite sophisticated technical hacks. So they really were the domain of the organisations that were involved, and particularly the security professionals who are responsible for guarding our information. Unfortunately, there's very little that you and I could have done to have avoided those scams, which is most unfortunate. I guess the slightly lucky thing in an ironic way is that the lesser known scams, hey mum, I've got a new phone and I need some money, those sort of things that we all receive pretty much daily at this point, there are a few things that we might be able to do to help ourselves to minimise risk from those.
Yes, well, fortunately that person was apprehended, but these larger organisations, including banks, are custodians of our private details, our life, our financial status, and what can we do? Passwords, what can we do to protect ourselves?
Yes, so passwords are important, and look, frankly, they're also a bit of a nuisance, aren't they? They're difficult to remember, and you know, if we're using something where it doesn't show us what the password is, we might type it incorrectly. The approach that I recommend or suggest with passwords is that they really need to be fit for purpose. So if we're guarding something that's very valuable, like our banking or our superannuation or our investments, then we need to choose passwords that are suitably difficult to crack. Whereas I have subscriptions to things like ABC iView or SBS On Demand, not meaning to devalue those, but they're less valuable to me, and I'm more likely to let maybe Google manage my password for those particular services. So I think it's important to use very strong passwords for the things that are important to us, and maybe we can have a little bit more convenience, a little bit more ease of use with some of the other services that we enjoy.
Well, we hear more and more about internet fraud and scams online, and I'm always very cautious about placing my card details online or paying anything online. In fact, I'm quite frightened of it, actually. I'm still an old-fashioned person with a cheque or cash. But how can we protect ourselves from that area?
Loretta, there is one thing that we can do in that space, and well, actually there are a small number of things. The first thing is to make sure that if we are using our credit card details, there's a small padlock in the top left-hand side of where we're browsing the internet. So you might be using Internet Explorer or Microsoft Edge, Google Chrome or Firefox, whichever browser that you use to shop on the internet, there's a little padlock up in the top left corner, and that indicates that Secure Sockets Layer is being used. And what Secure Sockets Layer is it allows the messages that are being sent between our computer or our phone or our iPad, whatever device it is that we're using, the messages that are going between that and our bank or the service provider are encrypted. So they're encoded, which means that if anybody does happen to pick those messages up on the wide internet where there are lots of messages going backwards and forwards and lots of people listening in, the messages are encrypted so they can't see what the detail is. They cannot see your credit card details. They cannot see what you're purchasing. That's one thing that we can do. Another thing that we can do, and again, this is a very personal choice, but I think it's probably prudent to be a little bit judicious about which sites we buy things from. So I only buy from very large, reputable websites that I'm aware of and that I've used previously or that I know friends have had good experiences with. Someone very dear and close to me chooses to buy shoes from somewhere outside of that range, and we have had some issues in that front. So I think whilst I wouldn't advocate total fear, I think a little bit of judgment about which sites we purchase from, and then definitely making sure that little padlock, the little SSL thing is employed will help us a bit.
I think it's a personal discipline in ensuring that we do look at that. Well, let's move on to social engineering. And one of the things that I'm very worried about when we talk about artificial intelligence, etc., but social engineering and identity fraud,
yes,
this is big time now.
It is. It's huge. And to be honest, Loretta, I would speculate that there's more lost and there are more damage caused by these social engineering attacks than there are through the very technical hacks, despite the fact that those hacks like Optus Medibank and Latitude are more publicly known. Last year, ScamWatch reported that there were 14,603 impersonations of banks. And these are not technical hacks. These are people phoning you and I. These are people sending you and I text messages, you and I email. And this is what we mean by social engineering, that they're not particularly sophisticated. However, they can be quite convincing. They often have a little bit of information about us, which makes us believe them when they sort of extend what they say to us. And this is where we really need to look for context. So we need to look and say, does this make sense? Is this something that I was expecting from this service provider? With the emails and the text messages, often there are little telltale clues. So the email addresses will often have a Gmail address or a Hotmail address rather than an email address which actually reflects the website of the organisation that is claiming to interact with you. So, for example, if you're dealing with, say, ANZ Bank, you would expect to see anz.com.au on the end of the email address, not gmail.com, which is freely available and you and I can set up an account in less than 5 minutes.
Well, what about facial recognition and this is moving into this area now, of course, and stealing your identity as far as your voice is concerned and your facial features and so on. Is this something that we must be conscious of, or
Yes.
I don't want to be fear-mongering with this, but I think we do have to move into the next realm of how we're facing these things.
Yes, unfortunately, I think you're right. You know, facial recognition, I have heard of cases where it's been fooled by a photo. And voice recognition, certainly, if we're interacting on the telephone, we provide enough of our voice to be able to give a signature which could then be reused for a purpose which we were not authorising it for.
I've been told not to say your name when you answer the phone. Hello, this is... so I use something else.
It's so sad. I think it's awful that we're at that stage, but unfortunately, I would maintain that suggestion, yes.
Well, it's fraught with danger, and we must be consciously and daily aware of that we are at risk, and to be sensible with our dealings, not only in business but at home. Scam callers, Cam, that call on us and deliver a parcel, for example, and say, you need to pay the postage on this. we don't take cash, we need your credit card, and that's at the door.
Yes.
And I've had someone come to offer to clean my carpets and various things. Unless you make a special arrangement for someone to come to your home, perhaps you'd probably advise not to take anything from the door.
Yes,
Call
I
us.
would.
Call.
Absolutely, and that comes down to what I call context. Are you expecting this interaction? So if I receive a SMS or a email from my bank, is this something that I have initiated, or is this something which I'm not expecting? So context is important. I advise people to run something past somebody else, get another set of eyes, get a fresh set of eyes on it, validate externally. So instead of blindly accepting that an email or a phone call is coming from who it's supposed to be coming from, check up on it. You know, if you need to ring the bank, or I've heard of people actually going into a bank branch to try and confirm something and then being told, no, actually we didn't initiate that.
Absolutely frightening. Now, we'll just finish off. I really think we should include this because older people seem to be caught up in dating and romance scams. It's a very serious thing, and if one's lonely and someone approaches in one way or another online or by telephone, or even just what seems to be a perchance meet.
Yes, look, again, it's sad to say, I'd rather not say, but if something's too good to be true, unfortunately it's not. And that's one of the principles that I like to try and suggest to people, because I see you've got the Scam Watch book there, and it's a very good booklet. Unfortunately, though, the scammers are quicker at coming up with these than what the government are at finding them and putting them into books. So we really need to have principles like, if it's too good to be true, it's not. Is the context there? Have I spoken to somebody else about it? Have I validated that this is real?
Cam, thank you so very much for taking us through this today. And I think Scam Watch and ACCC through Scam Watch do advise that if you are unsure about anything, or you have been scammed, you've lost your money, get in touch with them and just let them know what's happened.
Yes.
And you yourself, your business, are you available for consultation, or do you do talks on this sort of thing?
Yes, I do regular talks on scams and cyber safety, and yes, I am available if people would like some help in this
Perhaps
field.
you'd like to give us a contact detail. Your
Yes.
business is?
Yes, so my name's Cam Stirling, and it's 0414 482 542.
And your company?
Technology Connections.
Yes, let us know that you've certainly registered as a business in this.
Thank you, Loretta.
Thank you very much. My guest today has been Cam Stirling from, as he said, Technology Connections. And I thank you so very much for calling on us.
Thank you for having me, Loretta.